Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives, and also the neighborhood cat. Poor old Mr. Ash can't move the cat off the console enough to move the keys. I hope we're on the air live. That's what he indicated we are. As is always,
you have offended that cat. I see she has her back turned.
He walked off of me. All right. We do have a personality, and we have some things to talk about this morning.
You do have a personality.
Several things. He's a personality. We're not sure about him, but we're going to work that out. Mrs. Busby,
yes?
By your leave,
yes.
Jim, we always try to start a Viewpoint with a kudo or maybe two or three or somebody or some organization in the community. The American Legion Auxiliary this Sunday is going to have a little dinner for veterans. And I just, as one of those guys who, being honored from way back, that takes a lot of work. And these ladies have gotten together, and they're putting this program on this Sunday for us, dinner and so forth. We appreciate that, girls. We really do. I want to thank you very much. I'm going to steal everybody else asunder and presume to thank for every one of us that are going to be there. So I just thought you'd like to know that.
That's very nice. This isn't the first time, though, is it?
Oh, no.
How long have they been doing this? A good while.
Well, yeah, and of course the St. John's Church for years.
Yes.
Annually in February, in November, put one on, and I'm gonna tell you, folks, those are appreciated. Okay, now why don't we just jump right into the subject matter and introduce our guest this morning, and then we'll see if we can irritate somebody enough to put a phone call in, 648-5510. One or two or both of our listeners, Jim, might get angered by something we say, hopefully, and
Is
respond.
that a goal? That's my goal, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
yes,
remember
please.
now, these aren't our. Well, they in a way are our judges too, so we have to remember that. Go ahead and introduce our guest this morning.
Well, yes, I think that would be well. We have with us today an attorney.
Uh-oh.
I've run the whole day.
He's also Hey, do you ever get tired of those lawyer jokes, Jim?
I've never heard a single one.
I've got a sheet of them here, courtesy of Mr. Gossett. Jim Grimaldi is an attorney at law and also has been very interested in the courses for gun safety.
Yeah.
Are you still involved in that, too?
Yeah, I'm actually a certified pistol instructor. I teach from time to time up here in Atlanta
Yes.
with Annette Chapman at Pistol Prep Academy, teaching concealed carry classes and that type of thing.
Yeah, we want to talk about it a little bit. We talk about your profession. And not everybody understands that, we have folks in the legal profession who they specialize in certain specialties of the law, like real estate. Some are do only estates and so forth. We're letting the cat out now, if you would. Jim wasn't leaving us.
Her nibs.
The cat didn't like what I had to say, apparently.
But Jim specializes in a factor of the law that maybe people don't understand, and some perhaps don't even appreciate it because he appears for the bad guys, or girls in this case. Or ostensibly so. We'll say that ostensibly so but they're not guilty because they've only been charged. They're not guilty until they're found guilty.
Well, a lot of people assume that the truth of the matter is, I represent a lot of people that have been charged with certain violations. But the vast majority of my clients, over 90%, at least 95%, have never been in trouble before, and they're all around decent people, and some of them might have made a mistake, and some of them might not have, and were unfairly charged. But it's I wouldn't say. Believe me, I've had every walk of life and every profession, from politicians
and lack thereof
to judges. Not judges. I don't think I've had a judge client before, have I?
That'd be interesting.
But I've definitely had lawyers. I've had politicians. I've had doctors. I've had every profession.
Not just the street rigs.
Correct. Yeah, and vast majority of my clients, majority of my clients are people like that. If they did it, which is always a question, is they just messed up, and I represent a lot of just regular people.
Mistakes. Some people.
Some people make mistakes, and you know, we're not perfect people.
No.
So
well, that's what I'm told.
I've made the same mistakes as a lot of my clients. I just never been caught.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I always say.
It's just kind of the luck of the draw.
For example, like this morning, I thought I was going to be late to come up here, and driving down old 66 on the way up here, and I thought, man, I don't want to go too fast, but I need to get there on time. And I thought, hey, I'll just follow this little black car. He seems to be going pretty quick. And I got closer and closer to the black car, and the black car was going pretty quick, let me tell you. And I pulled up and I said, wait a minute, World War II sticker. I think I know that guy. And
oh my goodness.
And it turned out to be some guy that lives in my neighborhood who shall remain nameless, but he's one of the 3 people in here. And it's not Mrs. Busby, I'll tell you that. But for example, everybody, it's really hard to stay completely in line all the time. Let's put it that way.
My wife tells me that every day at my house.
Well,
go ahead, Judith K.
Why did you decide to specialize in criminal law?
I want to clear that up. All right. So according to the Bar Association, we can't say that we specialize in anything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because that
point number 1.
That insinuates that there's some sort of
bad guy.
No, it insinuates that there's some sort of specialization process or a certification process to be a type of lawyer. Okay, so any lawyer that's admitted to the bar can do anything a lawyer can do.
Yeah.
And they frown upon us saying we specialize in something. So that's why I say I focus my practice on something. Now, theoretically, I can do just about anything any other attorney. I could write a will if I really wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know anything about wills.
Yeah.
But that's just
not your
semantics, Jim.
Well, it's semantics to you, but to the law, it's pretty, to the Bar Association, it's pretty important. So I focus on criminal defense. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
now, how did that happen, though?
How did that happen? Well, during law school, I became a clerk for the judges of the 7th Circuit, which is the Springfield, at the Springfield Courthouse. And I got to be exposed to a lot of different types of law. I did some contract stuff. I did some probate stuff. I did a lot of criminal stuff, and I enjoyed the criminal work the best. And after I graduated, I went to work for the Sangamon County State's Attorney's Office, and that's where I got my career started, and I was there for 3 years.
You know, maybe I was sitting here thinking, we had a local guy mentioned World War II. There's an episode there. He became a lawyer. He came back home after flying around Europe during that Second War. As George Goebel says, you must have been about that.
It was in all the papers, yeah.
It was.
And he went to law school. And he dropped his anchor in Dallas, Texas. Mark Holland was his name. And he was a specialist, just like you are in that field of law.
He focused in it.
And, well, he says
I can get in trouble if I say I specialize in something. I don't know.
So
we don't want trouble.
He says I do for the big boys down there. The really big boys that get in trouble, and he says I make them pay. And the cat is coming out or coming in. I'm not sure which. But anyway. That's what Mark did in his trial practice was that type of law. Notice I skirted around, didn't say specialty.
Yeah, you're very good. You're a quick learner.
But I suspect Jim saw that, there's a chance to have a decent income.
Well, it's funny you should mention
but you have to work really hard for that.
It's funny you should mention that. When I started my firm, which was about 7 years ago.
Only 7.
That's when I started on my own. I'd work with some other attorneys and some United States attorneys. I think this year would be my 12th, 13th year as an attorney, something like that. But I had a decision to make. What am I gonna do? Because we're in a fairly small community.
You bet we are.
And
rife with lawyers.
Well, there's quite a few lawyers, and there are but if you notice, most of the lawyers that we have are general practitioners. They do a lot of different types of things.
Sure.
Most do, probate or civil or dabble in criminal and this and that. And I said to my wife, I said, listen, I've done other types of law, and I'm not going to ever do anything else other than criminal defense. And if we starve, we starve. And, being in a small town and having such a narrow focus, I thought, well, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. At least I'm going to like what I'm doing. And then hopefully people know, well, maybe if he's not splitting his time between all these other areas, then he knows what he's doing. Yeah. So I'm still here.
And that's the way it's worked out.
I'm still here. We're still open.
Nobody has starved, have they?
No. Especially not me. I put on probably 20 pounds.
I'm not sure that temperamentally I would be a decent lawyer in that phase of the law.
Criminal defense is special.
When a guy walks into my office, and I know in my heart that sucker is guilty but he's got a right to be represented, and I'm not sure I can do that.
Think about it this way.
It takes a special guy to do that. Or
Mr. Gossett, think about it this way. And I say this a lot of times during my trials to the jury. I say the question here isn't guilt or innocence. It's not whether somebody did something or didn't do something. That's not the question. The question in our criminal justice system is guilty or not guilty, and that means a very specific thing. That means that if somebody's guilty, the prosecution had enough evidence and presented enough evidence to prove them guilty. And if they're not guilty, that means the prosecution did not provide enough evidence. There's a distinction there between guilt and innocence and guilty or not guilty. And I think it's important to differentiate between those two, because our system is built on not presumptions or not assumptions or what could have happened, what might have happened. It's all built upon what the state can prove. And I believe it's, with all its flaws, it's the most just and appropriate system in the world.
Yeah, and you are quick to say with all its flaws, and there are obvious flaws. There are flaws in any piece of legislation that comes out of any legislative body. It can't be 100%. We all understand that. Did you ever?
If there weren't flaws, there aren't going to be people exonerated. After spending 30, 40 years in jail for murders they didn't commit. So if something that important, if somebody can spend that much time after being convicted by a jury of their peers, and I'm sure everybody's heard those stories about the people that have spent 25, 30 years in prison because they put witnesses up there. The prosecution hopefully thought that they got the right guy and put the evidence up there, and the jury found them guilty in the perfect process, but then they turn out, 25 years later, they check the DNA evidence, and it wasn't them. Now, if that can happen in a murder case or a forcible rape case, don't you think it could happen in just about any other type of case? I would imagine. They spend a lot of resources on those cases, and if it can slip through the cracks in a case like that.
Even civil litigation, where people, property matters, mistakes can be made there just as easily as anywhere else.
Yeah, none of us is perfect, and that's why we have the system. So,
tell me about jury picking, Mr. Grimaldi. Most of us are aware of how a pool is picked, but let's take it from the picking of a jury pool to a picking of a jury for a particular case.
Well, first thing you have to do is think about who your client is, what your theory of the case is, and what the charged offense is. Okay, and you have to find people that are not biased, and that's the whole process of picking a jury, is trying to find an unbiased juror.
Isn't that almost impossible in today's time?
Everybody has biases, but what we want to do is get rid of, or excuse is the proper term, excuse the people that have biases that they just cannot overcome. And you do that by asking questions and getting a little personal with the jurors, and making sure they don't have any prejudices or biases, but more importantly, and this might get in a little more of the nuts and bolts of it, but you're trying to find certain personalities as well.
Sure.
You don't want to have a lot of. Typically, what they teach attorneys is you only want to have one or two people that are the real mouthpieces in the jury room. You only want to have a couple Type A personalities in there. The rest are people that can be swayed one way or the other. So theoretically, and this doesn't happen a lot, but theoretically all you have to do is convince those two people or those three people out of 12, and they'll convince the rest of the people. And it's important to figure out who those are.
Yeah.
It's not an exact science, believe me.
Well, whence cometh the jury pool? How does somebody get Judy Busby's name drawn? So she has to be show up at the courthouse on a given day to be a prospective juror.
I believe they do it by voter record. I think the prospective voters in the county, people who have registered to vote, are thrown.
It was driver's license.
Is it? I don't.
What?
No, I just am saying that.
What did you think it was?
Driver's license.
Well, no, I don't know because I think
I never heard that. I've heard what Jim referred to.
It'd give you a bigger pool. A lot more people drive than
it vote. Would, but there's a lot more people that can drive that can't be.
There's a lot of people that vote that can't be.
Mr. Grimaldi, as you're participating in the selection of a jury, you look at a prospective juror out of the pool there, and you're going to get to your chance to interview them and make your decisions. Did you ever look at somebody, lady or man, and they look and say, "Boy, I don't want that sucker on my jury"?
Every time we have a jury pool. Every single time, not just by looking at them, and that's one thing. You can tell a little bit about something, some people by looking at them, but once they open their mouth, and that's the question, or that's the key. You have to get them to talk. It's not about it's not about yes or no answers a lot. You have to ask open-ended questions. That gets their beliefs out there.
We're going to open our questions for our give them a chance to talk, our sponsors. Okay. And then we will come right back and appear before the bench.
All right.
Go right ahead, Jim. And we're right back live in the studios here at WLCN, the Viewpoint, of course. Our program this morning is an old friend of ours, neighborhood guy, lives in my old house, by golly. And I've known his family for years. And so he's kind of like an old friend, even though he's... where were you born, Jim?
Well, that's a whole different conversation. I was actually born in France.
In France.
That just happens to be where I was when I came to this world.
Well,
kind of like John McCain was born in Panama.
Yeah.
American citizen.
Yeah.
I was born in France.
I never knew that to this day.
Yeah.
So.
But your parents were American. Doesn't that make you an American or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. You betcha.
I can run for president. Now, after some of the things I said on Facebook, I probably will never get elected, but let's put it...
Well, the way it's going now, if I were you, I'd say thank you, God, for that. Because that poor man is getting spit at from 7 ways from Sunday.
Hey, we'll continue to do that. We opened up this morning talking about lawyers.
Well, you are part of the media.
Well,
we're on the radio right now. You are the mainstream media.
You know something?
I hope you don't spit
But I'm
in my
a little bit different from the rest of them. Yeah, so is Judy.
This doesn't, I don't think we think of that way, because we just think about, we go up here, we get some coffee, and we talk with somebody nice. And it's fun. Well, we don't think about anybody listening. Maybe they aren't. If you are, call.
we're discussing the practice of Jim. Is it criminal law? That doesn't actually describe your practice.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
I mean, but that includes quite a bit of. That's a
civil.
It's there's really only one thing in the civil arena that I do, and that's driver's license reinstatement. But those all arise out of a criminal charge. So a criminal charge then triggers a driver's license suspension or revocation. And I represent quite a few people, hundreds, I think. Not at a particular time. I probably have right now 30 clients that
pending on that
are pending. It's a long process, let me tell you. I mean, it takes years.
To regain a driver's license?
Due to a revocation, yes. I think the minimum, the shortest I've ever seen is probably about a year. Yeah.
Does anyone ever lose their driver's license for anything other than
like a DUI,
an infraction that involved your car or speeding or whatever?
Yeah, and this is a lot of people don't. The most common one I get is, say, a young person being under 21 years of age has a drink of alcohol. Okay, they're nowhere near a car. Nowhere near a car. If they drink alcohol and get caught, that's a criminal charge. Okay, that's it's under 6-20 of the Criminal Code. It's under the Liquor Control Act, and even if they're not with a car, that conviction or that supervision, whatever the disposition is, gets reported to the Secretary of State, and they will lose their driver's license.
It's automatic.
Automatic, yeah. And they don't tell you that in court. Because
why do they keep that a secret?
They don't keep it a secret. It's just not part of the criminal process. So it's not something. It's what we call a collateral effect, which is an effect on your life that is collateral or incidental or not directly revolving the criminal case. The criminal case, all they can do, they can put you in jail for a year, they can fine you up to $2,500, they can put you on probation for 2 years, but they can't, the judge can't take away your driver's license. That conviction then gets sent to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State,
they jerk it.
Yep.
Well, is that an automatic thing, or does the Secretary of State's office
no discretion.
Have no discretion?
None whatsoever. Okay. The only difference is how long, and that depends on the type of disposition and how many times you've been put through the system with the same charge. But they don't have discretion on that either. It's just they basically have a list they go through, and they say, well, how many times has this person gotten a consumption of alcohol charge, and what was the disposition? And they look on the list and say, well, your license is suspended for 6 months or a year or 3 months or whatever it is.
And you allude to the fact that that's getting that license back is a long process. Normally,
in that type of scenario, usually it's called a suspension. All right, so there's differences between a driver's license suspension and a driver's license revocation, and I don't know how deep we want to get into this, but a suspension, all you have to do is wait your time. It's for a set period of time, like 6 months, and then pay a fee at the end. A revocation is a little more complicated. You actually have to go through hearings at the Secretary of State, and the time frame is open-ended. It could last as long as it takes for you to jump through whatever hoops you have to jump through to get your license back. And those are the ones that are, I think it's necessary to have an attorney, because so many people go out there and get denied relief because they don't know what they're getting into. So,
is there, in your course of providing your services for our Logan County folks here, anybody, they don't have to be anywhere, or citizens, period,
or non-citizens.
Pardon me? Or not citizens. No, you hit an important point there. Just we assume,
I've had quite a few people that aren't American citizens as clients.
Now, that should not enter into it insofar as the particular case being handled at that time, whether they are citizens or not citizens. That should not be pertinent.
Not if they are charged in the United States. If you're charged in criminal court of the United States, you have equal protection under the Constitution.
648-5510. Somebody might want to get a little free advice up here this morning. We promise not. We promise not to tell the counselor.
You know what Abraham Lincoln said? A lawyer's time and attention are his stock and trade. I get questions. I'm on Facebook, and I get questions every day.
Do you really?
Without fail, on Facebook Messenger.
Is that a
every
fact?
Every day, I'll have somebody that says, "Hey, can you tell me about what was the last one?" Somebody asked me, "When is it? How old does a child have to be to testify?" And I said, "Well, what kind of case is it?" And they said, "A divorce case." I said, "I have no idea. Yeah. I'm not a divorce lawyer."
Yeah.
But every day I get questions about wills on Facebook Messenger.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Well,
and I usually just refer them to the people that can answer those questions.
There's a way of a lot of Facebook answers a need, and well, not necessarily a need, but they have some good things. But boy, the alternate side of that is pretty lousy. Yeah. There's some bad stuff out there. And
they'll message me at 2:00 in the morning.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's hard. That's hard to believe. Okay, now you have another interest. Well, you have a legion of interest. I call Jim my Renaissance man, with great respect. You have a lot of different interests.
Hobbies.
Flying among them.
I'm studying for my pilot's exam right now. Actually, just about ready.
Just about. Well, that's
look out below.
That's a done deal. Yeah, Jim asked me if I wanted to go up with him. I said, yeah, after you get a few hundred more hours, I'll be glad.
There was a period of about 2 years where I took off, in every plane I took off in, I didn't land. I jumped out when I was in the military, and they paid me $150 a month to do that.
That's right. He was a paratrooper in the military.
But now I'm learning how to land them, so that's the important thing. So I know how to jump out.
Well, you figured those guys didn't know how, when you were flying, when you were in the military, you figured they didn't know how to land it, so you'd go ahead of them.
If they didn't land, I could still jump out. Yeah.
Gun control and the matter of packing, so to speak, which is a vernacular, means that somebody's carrying a firearm. How did you get into your interest in that, Mr. Grimaldi? And
it all really started, I think, as far as concealed carry is concerned. Yes, I think it started with the fact that sometimes I follow Supreme Court cases, and the Heller case out of D.C., which paved the way for a lot of striking down of a lot of unlawful statutes that a little more, I would say, left-leaning cities were putting on people. That Heller decision is a famous decision, Supreme Court case where the city of Washington, D.C. says you can't own a handgun in your own home for self-defense. And the Supreme Court basically said, yeah, that's pretty much unconstitutional. You can't tell people they can't own a handgun in their own home. And so it was through following that stuff. And then finally we had the case here in Illinois that overturned, the Supreme Court case in Illinois that overturned our ban on concealed carry. It really wasn't a ban. We just didn't have a law in the books allowing it. And believe it or not, I think I was the first person, myself and my neighbor across the street, who you know, were the first people in Logan County to actually hold a concealed carry license. And I think I was the first one because the mailman stopped at my house right before he stopped at his house. So I actually had mine.
That's why he made you the first, Yep.
It's a constitutional right. You might as well exercise it.
This is Central Illinois. It's not Texas, where it's a pretty common sight to see some guy walk into an office with a packing a gun.
Let me tell you a story about that. So when I was in the military, I was stationed once in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which is in Sierra Vista.
Yeah, I've been there.
One day I went off post and went to the Blockbuster Video, which is, for all you young kids out there, is a video store. I went into the Blockbuster Video, and keep in mind, I came straight from Illinois. And I walked in there, and I was walking around, and then all of a sudden I look, and there's a guy standing there, just a flannel shirt, blue jeans on, and he had what I would guess at this time was a 7 or 8 inch barreled .44 Magnum hanging on his hip.
That's a big
okay?
gun.
And I looked at it, and I'm thinking, boy, we ain't in Kansas anymore. What I should have said was we ain't in Illinois anymore. I had no idea how restrictive our laws in Illinois were. We're, I think, the only state in the union that requires a FOID card just to even touch a firearm. Well, there might be another out there, but I don't know what it is. It's just a different culture outside of Illinois. And even as close as Missouri, you cross into Missouri and it's a totally different thing. And the way people view firearms is a totally different thing. Now, Central Illinois, being a more conservative base, is more apt to accept that type of, behavior.
Okay.
But you go into some of the bigger city centers and they freak out, really, sometimes. It's a matter of mindset, really. So...
Well, gun control is a very, very touchy matter in every household. In your household, in my household, and if Buzz were with us, in his household, it would be fine. But a lot of people are mandating, they are crying for a mandate. We've got to control the guns. Well,
you know what my idea of gun control is? Keep your finger off the trigger unless it's necessary, and lock up your weapons so people can't get to them.
Yeah, I always say, and it gets you stomped on once in a while, it's not the guns. Pitchforks hang in barns; they'll kill people too.
Yeah, that's a big pushback. Everybody's heard guns don't kill people; people kill people, and that's the same with anything. But
the matter of what do you have to go through to get a carrying license, Mr. Grimaldi?
Depends on who you are and what state you're in. Are we talking Illinois?
Yeah, let's just say here, Logan County.
Illinois. It also depends if you qualify. Usually people have to take a 16-hour class. They have to get fingerprinted. They have to get background checked. You have to get sent to the state police. Local law enforcement gets a chance to object if they think this person is dangerous for whatever reason.
Fair enough.
There are certain exceptions to that. LEOSA is a law that allows law enforcement officers and former law enforcement officers to carry without a concealed carry card. They have a different law. But another exception is for former military, like myself. We only have to take 8 hours of a class instead of 16. But that's usually it. You have to go through a background check. You have to take a class. You have to pay money. You have to go through fingerprint process. Well, you don't have to go through a fingerprint process, but it's a little faster. And they check you out and go from there. It takes a little bit of time.
In Chicago, they're shooting one another left and right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that of all those people who have shot one another, you'd find 4 who had a FOID card to start with. And secondly, then they say, well, we've got to strengthen the gun control rules, and then we won't have this problem. On the other hand, I understand that Chicago has some of the most stringent gun control rules that there are to be had.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of that. We have laws in the books.
And there are plenty.
And there's a lot of them. And you'd be surprised, actually, how many there are when it comes to this specific topic. The problem, I think, is in a lot of the major cities, because their docket is so full in a courthouse, they don't spend as much time as necessary prosecuting each and every one of them. Also, and this is a big factor, especially when it comes to shooting other people. I read a statistic the other day that in the city of Chicago, less than 10% of homicides are prosecuted.
Isn't that interesting?
Because they don't know who's doing it.
That brings me to a...
if you don't know who's committing a crime, then it's hard to prosecute them.
That brings me to a 5-page letter that I just recently came across, written by a gentleman who has resigned as United States Attorney in Chicago, big-time tough job. And he signed his name to it, so it's not anything that's kind of a nebulous statement. A 5-page open letter to the public, and those in law enforcement and legal business probably know about this. And he just talked about speaks to the frustration of the authorities in enforcing the rules, and there are so many that are out there, because of all of the factors. So he said, so the cops stopped making stops, and the kids started shooting more. Mm-hmm. And that must be. And this is a man, very, very bright guy. Obviously had great professional abilities. Served as United States Attorney, and he says, "I'm through." And he's going to make.
When did he write that letter?
March 13th
of this year.
Yeah. Now, I'll give you a copy.
Did he write that letter because was he through because he
total frustration? Apparently.
Total frustration, or was he through because he was appointed by a different president? That's
no, they didn't have. No, I don't. He was non-political.
And we were talking about this a little bit before we came on the air. Uh-huh. There was a big uproar about the current administration basically firing or terminating all the U.S., half the U.S. attorneys in the United States. And they, how could you do this? This is a political stunt. Well, the truth of the matter is, every administration, if there's a change in political party, the U.S. attorneys, not the assistants, but the U.S. attorneys are politically appointed posts. Mm-hmm. They work in the U.S. Attorney's Office, but they're politically appointed posts. Mm-hmm. And the tradition has been, every time there's a regime change, at least a political party change, the U.S. attorneys resign. And then the new guy, up till now, has all been guys, but the new guy puts in a new crew of U.S. attorneys. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever held over. It's just assumed that it's kind of like a Secretary of, Housing or Urban Development. Mm-hmm. When there's a new president, you get a new Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with U.S. attorneys. Mm-hmm. I think it was more of a political stunt to say, well, we're not leaving, so then you'll have to fire us. But that doesn't get brought up. But it's... Well, that's why I asked you, when's the letter dated, and why is this guy...
he says he's the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. Mm-hmm. Probably falls under that mantle which you just described.
Oh, yeah. Every U.S. attorney, it doesn't matter where they are, mm-hmm. even if they're in a conservative area, is appointed by the president.
He claims not to be political. He says...
no, they all claim not to be political. But if you're appointed by the president, there's got to be some political connection there somewhere.
Absolutely.
No, it doesn't matter what the job is.
But I find it, these gentlemen in the blue who are in their civilian clothing, who are out on the street on our behalf, every day, mm-hmm. that's a dangerous thing.
Absolutely.
That's a very dangerous job.
And I have, a lot of people are, I guess, surprised, and I'm not sure why, but a lot of people are surprised that I have so many friends that are police officers. They think, well, wait a minute. You're basically trying to undo all the work that they did. Yeah. And I said, well, it's not about that. And I'm friends with, and I support our law enforcement community 100%, and 95% of them are friends of mine. There's a few that we don't get along or for whatever reason, probably because I'm such a brash person. But
we're about to run out of time. But I want to get to this shooting instructions. Okay. You help out. We have a firearms range. Up here in Atlanta, I think we have one couple down in Lincoln. Let's talk about that just a minute.
The one in Atlanta is public. Mm-hmm. The ones in Lincoln are private.
Private shooting ranges, mm-hmm. Yes. Our officers use them down there, plus the Golden County Sportsman's Club or whatever that is.
Private organization, but anybody can join. Yeah.
Now tell us about this one up here north of us. We had that lady up here many months ago when she just started that.
Annette Chapman, yes. Mm-hmm. See that range up here and it's right just past the in Atlanta, just past the golf course, mm-hmm. and it's a public it's a public court range, meaning it's owned by the city. The city owns and maintains it. Now, that doesn't mean you can just walk up and start shooting. You have to go through, you have to have a certified range officer there, and I think you probably have to let them know you're going out there and sign up. I don't know the procedures. But it's a public range, and it's maintained by the city of Atlanta.
Do you have to have some sort of certification to show that you're responsible enough to have a firearm, have had training before they'll license you for concealed carry?
Yeah, you have to go through a 16-hour class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is actually that's the most hours required by any state in the United States, 16 hours.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Real quickly before we close, Jim, you associate with our law enforcement officers as a matter of your own personality and then your profession. Have they made comments about civil or about concealed carry? How would they feel about that generally? Are you qualified?
Well, it's just and I talk to a lot of them.
Sure.
And I'm friends with a lot of them, and I think it's just like anywhere else. It's more, a lot of it is based on where you live and the nature of your community. I would say a vast majority of police officers are for concealed carry.
They are.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they know that you have to go through certain steps to get your concealed carry license, and they obviously believe in the right to protect yourself. I mean, they wouldn't be carrying a firearm if the reason the police officers carry a firearm, and that's a big misconception. The reason police officers carry a firearm is to defend themselves, and so they can go home at night.
Yeah.
And basically, the Supreme Court says, well, everybody has that same right to defend themselves, and so they can go home safe at night.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Yep.
Our guest this morning at Viewpoint has given of his time, his very valuable time. Guy's a busy guy. We appreciate, Jim, your coming up with us this morning.
Well, anytime.
And sharing your little expertise about what you do for people, and maybe once in a while, two people.
Yeah.
As far as all said and done. Will Rogers, one of America's great humorists, we close with his statement. It says, "Make crime pay. Become a lawyer."
There you go.
Thank you, Jim Grimaldi.
All right.